So I was on this consultation call last week, right, with this guy, super smart software engineer, and he was like almost vibrating with excitement. He'd spent the last 8 months, basically all his free time, evenings, weekends, secretly building what he called his killer app.
Okay, the secret project. Always a bit of a red flag, but go on.
Right. So he shares his screen, and honestly, it was impressive, technically, I mean. A really complex system it was for, let's say, managing restaurant inventory using some pretty novel AI stuff.
Right.
The code looked clean, the UI, slick. He'd built out projections, feature roadmaps. He'd even sketched out a patent application.
Wow, okay, so he'd gone deep on the product side.
Totally. And he says, with this absolute conviction, no one has thought of this. It's the one great idea I've been waiting for. He finishes the whole pitch beaming, just waiting for me to be blown away.
Yeah.
And I just asked him one simple question. Who's your first customer?
The question.
Exactly. He just stared through the webcam,
Yeah.
The silence was really heavy. Finally, he goes, what do you mean? I haven't tried to sell it yet. I had to build it first, right? To prove it works.
Oh, boy, yeah.
That moment, that feeling, that just total paralyzing gap between this technically perfect idea and an actual paying customer, I swear that's the single biggest reason I see startups just die before they even really start.
And that story, I mean, that just perfectly sums up the core conflict, doesn't it, for so many early stage founders. It's this huge chasm between what's technologically possible, building something brilliant, and what's viable in the market, building something people will actually pay for.
Yeah.
And most founders, especially the really technical ones, they just fundamentally misunderstand the right order to do things in.
Exactly. We often call it the idea trap. You get so wrapped up in optimizing the theory or the complexity or just the sheer intellectual purity of your solution that you completely miss the brutal reality of the market. So our mission today really is to dive deep into how the successful startups actually manage to bridge that gap.
Right.
We're going to look at what investors expect. We'll dig into validation frameworks like jobs to be done and really analyze the financial and technical strategies you need to get past just the idea and build something fundable, something scalable.
Yeah, we're essentially trying to give you a shortcut here, a way to get informed on this absolutely crucial transition point. We really need to unpack the strategies, the methods that successful tech startups use. How do they find and really validate genuine market problems?
And prioritize actually doing something over just having a novel idea, especially now when everything feels so competitive.
Exactly. It means you have to prioritize action, validation, and honestly, smart financial planning. Way over that seductive myth of the perfect secret idea just waiting to be unveiled.
Okay, so let's unpack this idea trap a bit more. It's so easy to fall into, isn't it? Especially if you come from like an engineering background or maybe academia.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly seductive. You fall in love with the intellectual puzzle of the idea itself.
Right.
And you spend all your time polishing the pitch deck, modeling these hypothetical scale scenarios, or just trying to build what you think is this feature-complete, totally impenetrable first version.
And all that deep, focused work, but in isolation.
Right.
It just leads straight to delayed market insight, which is just fatal.
It's absolutely lethal.
Yeah.
And the data here, I mean, it's just starkly consistent across the board. Something like 42% of startups fail simply because there's no market need.
Wow, 42%. That's huge.
Think about that. Nearly half of all failed ventures weren't killed by, running out of money directly or terrible code or co-founder drama, although those happen too. They were killed because they built something nobody actually cared enough about to pay for.
It's like the ultimate punchline for that engineer I mentioned, right? He spent 8 months solving a problem, but maybe only he really had it.
Precisely. And that's the essential, kind of counterintuitive lesson here. Great execution of an average idea, even a boring one, can absolutely crush a brilliant, revolutionary idea that never gets shipped or properly tested against real customer needs.
So innovation isn't just about the light bulb moment in the lab.
Not at all. Contrary to that whole Silicon Valley myth-making, real innovation doesn't start with brainstorming whiteboards. It starts with focused action and, frankly, aggressive validation.
Okay, I get the action part. But how do you make sure that action isn't just, busy work? How do you focus on the right problem? It's easy to build a prototype, but building the right prototype, That's the tricky bit.
That is exactly where the jobs to be done framework JTBD becomes such a powerful tool, especially for that early stage validation.
JTBD, right. I've heard about this.
It basically shifts your whole focus away from the product features and zooms in on the customer's actual life, their context. The core idea is simple but really profound. Customers don't buy products. They hire them to get a specific job done in their lives.
I like that framing hiring a product. It forces you to think about the why, the motivation behind the purchase, not just the bullet points on a feature list. What kind of job are we talking about, though? Is it purely functional, like drill a hole?
Well, it's almost never purely functional. That's the key insight. The job usually has 3 dimensions. There's the functional, yes, like transfer money from A to B.
Okay.
But there's also the social dimension, like look competent to my boss while presenting this data. And there's the emotional, like reduce my anxiety during tax season.
Ah, okay. Functional, social, emotional.
Exactly. And the whole goal of using the JTBD framework is to uncover that deep motivation, the desired outcomes, across all 3 of those dimensions.
So practically speaking, if you're using this JTBD approach, what are the key steps? How do you actually go from this theory to getting real, actionable insights?
Yeah, so the framework gives you a pretty clear sort of 3-step path that helps pull you away from that idea trap. First, you have to rigorously define your early adopter customer.
Not just a vague demographic.
No, absolutely not. Not just small business owners. It needs to be specific, like the owner of a local cash-heavy bakery who currently handles payroll manually and hates it. You need to find the person whose pain is significant enough that they'll actually pay for an early, maybe imperfect solution.
Got it.
Yeah.
Be specific. Step 2.
Step 2 is conducting problem interviews. And the absolute key here is deep listening and actively fighting your own confirmation bias.
Right. You want to hear their problems, not just validate your solution.
Precisely. You dive into their past struggles, their pains. You have to avoid leading questions. So instead of asking, hey, would you use my cool AI inventory system, which just invites politeness.
Yeah, they'll just say, sure, sounds great.
Exactly. Instead, you ask something like, tell me about the last time you unexpectedly ran out of key ingredients. What were you actually doing at 2 a.m. that week because of it?
That's critical, because the minute you ask if they like your idea, the data gets muddy. You need data about their past behavior, their actual current frustration.
Yes. That data validates the pain, not necessarily your proposed solution. Which leads to the 3rd step, and this is often the hardest one for engineers like the guy you mentioned. Learn how to sell before you build the product.
Okay, how do you sell something that doesn't exist yet?
You create proxies. You build a compelling, targeted landing page, maybe run a simple ad campaign. You gauge real interest and measure actual engagement.
So you're testing the value proposition, the messaging, maybe even the price point before sinking months into coding.
Exactly. And you measure intent. Are people actually signing up for the wait list? Are they clicking the pre-order now button? Even if that button just leads to a simple, thanks, we'll be in touch message.
Okay.
This pre-building validation is absolutely crucial for proving demand exists outside your own head. If that conversion rate is abysmal, it's not time to start coding. It's time to go back and rethink the value proposition, or maybe even the problem itself. It's pure, low-cost risk reduction.
And the output of all this validation work, the interviews, the landing page tests, that feeds into the job story.
Yes, exactly. The job story is a way to encapsulate the problem and the motivation you've uncovered. It uses a specific format. When situation, I want to motivation so I can outcome.
Give me an example.
Okay, so instead of a typical user story like, as a restaurant owner, I want mobile alerts for low stock, which is feature focused.
Right.
A job story based on those interviews might sound like, when I'm slammed during the dinner rush and physically can't check the dry storage, I want to automatically know if my expensive truffle oil is running low so I can avoid that emergency late-night supply run and keep the kitchen flowing smoothly without stressing out my already overworked staff.
Ah, see, that's much richer. It connects directly to the situation, the motivation, and the emotional and social outcomes, avoiding stress, keeping staff happy.
Precisely. It's grounded in the customer's reality.
Okay, this brings us back nicely to that tension we started with, perfecting an idea versus just executing on a clear market job. You mentioned an example.
Yeah, let's look at a tale of 2 fintechs. We can call them Quantum Ledger and Receipt Run. It's a classic case study of, idea worship versus execution excellence.
Okay, Quantum Ledger. What was their story?
Quantum Ledger was the quintessential great idea company, at least in their own minds. Their grand mission was to build this revolutionarily secure ledger system using really complex, novel blockchain algorithms.
Sounds ambitious.
Very. They spent a full 18 months in what they very pointedly called stealth mode. All their energy went into perfecting the algorithmic details, the latency, the theoretical security models. They genuinely believed their core idea was just too valuable to leak.
They were optimizing for a theoretical threat, maybe?
Exactly. They were solving for a level of security paranoia that their actual target market, small and medium enterprises, simply didn't have or prioritize.
Okay, so while Quantum Ledger was deep in their stealth lab, what was Receipt Run doing?
Receipt Run was tackling a problem that sounds, frankly, kind of dull. Just digitizing and categorizing paper receipts for small businesses.
Yeah, not exactly revolutionary tech on the surface.
Not at all. Existing software already did parts of it. But Receipt Run's insight was that none of the existing tools made the job easy or fast enough for their target user, the busy small business owner.
So their innovation wasn't in the core tech, but in the user experience.
Yes, precisely. They didn't try to invent new cryptography. They innovated on workflow and speed. They built a functional, minimum viable product, an MVP, in just 2 months.
2 months versus 18. Big difference.
Huge. And they immediately got it into the hands of real users. They gave it away initially to about 20 local businesses, actual bakeries, auto mechanics, independent contractors, people they knew hated that shoebox full of crumpled receipts method for tracking expenses.
They were getting real feedback from day one.
Constantly. They iterated relentlessly based on that feedback. If a bakery owner said, hey, I really wish this thing could automatically categorize purchases from my main flour supplier, Receipt Run would try to push that update within like 48 hours.
Wow.
They weren't aiming for some abstract perfection. They were building sprint by sprint to relieve the immediate, tangible pain points their users were telling them about.
And the outcome, how did it play out?
It's a pretty brutal lesson in market realities. By the time Quantum Ledger finally emerged from stealth to launch their perfect, super secure product, which again solved a problem the market didn't really feel was urgent or worth paying much for.
Yeah.
Receipt Run already had 1,000 paying users, and they were in the process of closing a pretty significant seed funding round.
Ouch.
It just perfectly proves the point, right? Solid execution and relentless customer validation around a tangible existing market problem will beat a secret, theoretically brilliant idea almost every single time in the race to actually build a viable, fundable business.
The customer just doesn't care how clever the code is under the hood.
Nope. They care about whether it gets their job done effectively.
Okay, so that Receipt Run story sets the stage perfectly for talking about investors. If you need capital, you basically need to demonstrate you have the mindset and, crucially, the proven behavior of a Receipt Run, not a Quantum Ledger.
Exactly.
Investors always say, we invest in people, not just ideas. But what does that actually mean in practice?
Well, it means they're really investing in founders who've thought about the specific problem domain more deeply, more intensely, and probably for longer than almost anyone else. It often translates to looking for deep domain expertise.
Like someone who's lived the problem.
Precisely. We often look for founders who've spent, say, 15 years or more actually working in that sector, maybe as an operator, an executive, even a specialized consultant. Someone who experienced the pain point so acutely day in and day out that they finally just hit a wall and thought, okay, this is ridiculous. There has to be a better way.
That lived experience is the founder's sort of intrinsic unfair advantage. But you can't just tell a VC you have that expertise, right? You have to show them something concrete.
Absolutely. Telling them isn't enough. You need to show them the proof. And often, that proof comes in the form of your customer discovery notes.
The actual notes from talking to people.
Yes. Successful founders, the ones who get funded, they have often spoken to upwards of 50 prospective customers before they even seriously start asking for capital.
50. Why that number specifically?
It seems to be a kind of saturation point. Around that number, you typically stop hearing genuinely new problems, and you start hearing variations on the same, maybe 3 core struggles over and over again. That's when you know you're onto something real.
And sharing that discovery process, maybe the raw notes, the key pain points you recorded, that acts as a strong signal, doesn't it? It suggests you'll actually be able to sell this thing later.
It's a huge proxy for future sales ability. It proves the founders have the empathy needed to truly understand the end user's operational challenges, their emotional frustrations, and it helps them zero in on their ideal customer profile, the ICP.
Right, finding that specific group who feels the pain most acutely.
And that refinement is critical for their go-to-market strategy. Through those 50 conversations, they might realize, okay, The director at this huge Fortune 500 company sees our solution as just a nice-to-have, something for next year's budget maybe. But the VP at this mid-market firm, for them, the exact same problem we solve is a burning platform. It's something threatening their job, their budget, if they don't fix it now. That distinction, finding the burning platform, that's everything.
Okay, so once you've hopefully found that ICP and validated the pain, you need to translate that knowledge into actual demonstrable traction, even before you have revenue.
Absolutely. Traction isn't just about money in the bank in the early days. It's about showing momentum. It's about showing commitment and action that validates the demand you claim to have discovered.
So what are VCs looking for then as signals of that pre-revenue traction?
They need quantifiable proof that the market is interested, that it's leaning in. So they look for practical things. Are people signing up for your waitlist?
Yeah.
And is that list growing? Are they signing up for your beta program?
Engagement matters too, presumably.
Hugely. What are the retention rates in your beta? How often do users come back? And how deeply are they using the product? Are they exploring all the features or just scratching the surface? High engagement is a massive validator.
And for maybe more complex B2B products or deep tech, what about technical milestones? Do they count as traction?
They definitely can. Evidence of operational progress matters. Things like successful MVP launches, getting detailed, positive feedback from initial pilot customers or design partners, and showing growth rates, maybe not in user numbers yet, but in usage metrics.
Like what?
Like, say, month-over-month increases in the amount of data your platform processes, or the number of tasks completed within the beta environment. Those kinds of metrics demonstrate real utility and stickiness.
But if you really want to de-risk the whole venture for an investor, especially in B2B, the most powerful form of pre-revenue traction, that seems to be actual pre-sales or maybe letters of intent.
Oh, this is often the absolute game changer. Let's paint a picture. Imagine two founders pitching a VC for pre-seed funding. They both want to build a complex B2B SaaS platform for, say, industrial logistics.
Okay.
Founder number one is purely technical, brilliant guy. He presents a fully coded AI logistics platform. It's an engineering marvel, clean code, perfect architecture. But when the VC asks about early customers or design partners,
Let me guess.
he admits he wanted the code to be finished and stable before subjecting it to the messiness of a real customer.
The classic trap, protecting the precious creation from the harsh reality of the market. Build it, then sell it.
Exactly. Then founder number two walks in. Let's call her Maria. Maria has zero code. All she has is a really well-designed functional Figma mockup showing the user flow.
Just a mock-up.
Just a mockup. But here's the difference. Maria spent 15 years working as a shift supervisor and then a plant manager in manufacturing. She viscerally understands the pain on the factory floor, the chaotic scheduling, the minutes wasted during shift handovers. She knows it better than anyone else in that room.
Okay, so she has the deep domain expertise, but what did she show the VC?
She pulled out 3 signed letters of intent LOIs from mid-sized regional factories. These were contacts she'd known and nurtured from her previous career.
And these weren't just vague emails saying, looks interesting.
These were formal documents. They essentially guaranteed payment for a pilot program, maybe $15,000 per factory contingent on Maria, eventually delivering a product that solves the exact problem her mock-up addressed.
So Maria gets the check.
Maria gets the check every single time. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
Because that direct industry experience combined with those signed LOIs proves something the perfectly finished AI product couldn't. Undeniable, immediate, contractually indicated market demand. For B2B investors, that LOI is gold.
It's not quite a purchase order, but it's serious intent.
It's a serious intent. It shows an enterprise customer has done enough due diligence to say, yes, we plan to allocate future budget to solve this specific problem using your proposed solution. It massively de-risks the venture because Maria proved before writing a single expensive line of code that somebody is actually willing to pay. That validation is often the single most important factor for those early-stage B2B investors.
Okay, so let's say you've navigated the idea trap. You've got that market validation, maybe even some LOIs like Maria. You've got the why. The next huge hurdle is building the financial foundation to actually execute that vision and do it sustainably.
Right.
And you mentioned earlier the whole world of B2B SaaS fundraising, it's changed quite dramatically, hasn't it? That old model of just raise a ton of money, grow at all costs, don't worry too much about efficiency, that's basically dead.
Oh, it's fundamentally obsolete. That's a really critical observation. VCs today aren't just rewarding hypergrowth anymore. They are intensely focused on resilience, on managing burn rate, and on capital efficiency.
So if you're raising a pre-seed or a seed round now, what does that mean in terms of planning?
It means you need to plan for a much, much longer runway. We're typically talking about having enough operating cash to last somewhere between 24 and 30 months.
24 to 30 months. Wow, that's a huge shift from the old standard, which felt more like 12 to 18 months. What's driving that?
It's really driven by market volatility and, frankly, increased investor skepticism.
Yeah.
Raising that next round, the follow-on Series A, it's just become way more unpredictable, and it takes significantly longer than it did, say, 5 years ago.
So a short runway puts you in a really vulnerable position.
Exactly. It forces you into this desperate, hurried fundraising process, which almost inevitably means you're going to get less favorable terms, a lower valuation. Having that 24, 30-month cushion gives you breathing room. It gives you flexibility to make necessary pivots, to weather market downturns, and crucially, to hit significant revenue milestones before you desperately need that next check.
Okay, and tied directly into that longer runway is this idea of capital efficiency. You mentioned founders needing to define their spending not just by the size of the check, but by their MVS.
Yes, the minimum viable spend. MVS, it's basically the financial embodiment of the lean startup philosophy. It means figuring out the absolute bare minimum expenditure you need to hit the next crucial fundable milestone.
What does that look like in practice for, say, an early B2B company?
It means maybe 80% of your capital goes directly into committed professional engineering and sales salaries. Maybe another 10% goes to essential cloud infrastructure. And that last 10% covers everything else.
So like shared office space instead of a fancy downtown lease.
Exactly. Renting a couple of desks, not signing an expensive 2-year lease you don't need yet. It forces discipline.
And the spending itself needs to be laser focused on things that actually drive the business forward, right?
Yeah.
Towards revenue.
Absolutely. It's not about not spending. It's about avoiding wasted spending. If you're spending money on acquiring customers, your customer acquisition cost or CAC, it needs to be demonstrably low and highly targeted, especially relative to the projected lifetime value, LTV, of those customers.
Investors want to see that linkage.
They need to see that every dollar being spent is focused on activities that generate long-term predictable revenue. It's all about maximizing that runway you fought so hard to get.
This focus on efficient spending brings us back to that core point you made earlier. A business really needs one of two things: capital or a customer paying the bills right now. If you have a brilliant idea, you validated the demand, but you personally lack the technical chops to build it, you absolutely need money to hire professional skill and a real commitment.
And this is exactly where so many non-technical founders, especially the ones who maybe struggle to get that initial angel or pre-seed funding, fall right into the undercapitalization trap.
Let's go back to that story you mentioned, Alex, the non-technical founder in Toronto. He had a great validated idea for a niche e-commerce platform, right?
Yeah, validated idea, knew the market, but zero capital. So he tried to solve the how do I build this problem by offering a massive chunk of equity, like 40%, to a recent coding bootcamp graduate, positioning them as his technical co-founder.
Okay, trying to get talent without spending cash sounds risky.
It was fundamentally unstable from the start and honestly unprofessional. For about 6 months, this developer was trying to build this ambitious platform, working nights and weekends, juggling it with their actual part-time job.
And the quality suffered, I assume.
Inevitably. The code was shaky. Shortcuts were definitely taken. Security wasn't properly baked into the payment integrations. The whole architecture was monolithic because, frankly, the developer just didn't have the deep experience needed to build for future scale or maintainability.
That's the huge operational risk you run with those informal equity-only deals, isn't it? The quality often just reflects the level of actual commitment and, well, compensation.
And then reality inevitably bites. Some established local tech firm comes along and offers the developer a stable full-time job, maybe $90,000 salary, benefits, paid vacation.
Yeah, hard to compete with that when all you have is monopoly money equity.
Exactly. The developer left, understandably, because that promised 40% equity in a struggling pre-revenue half-built startup was at that moment entirely speculative. It was worth zero compared to a secure paycheck. In Alex's project, it just died. Half-finished, unusable, because the core technical foundation was built on goodwill and hope, not capital.
It's a harsh lesson. If you need serious tech code that handles real customer data, payments, something that needs to scale, you need professional, skilled, and properly committed talent.
You really do. relying on these kinds of undercapitalized informal arrangements to build critical technical infrastructure. It's not just a risk, it's usually a fantasy. It almost always leads to either crippling technical debt down the road or just total project failure like Alex experienced.
Which is why, when VCs look at a founding team, they're not just ticking boxes on resumes. They're looking for evidence that this specific group of people can actually execute sustainably and professionally.
Absolutely. They're assessing the team's ability to function long-term.
So what does that ideal, balanced team look like from an investor's point of view?
Well, typically investors want to see complementary skills. You ideally need the visionary that's often the CEO, driving the strategy, leading the fundraising. You need the technical expert, the CTO, leading development, making architectural choices. And crucially, you often need someone focused on operations or sales, maybe a COO or a CRO, to make sure things actually get executed, revenue comes in, and customers are successful.
Because if everyone's a tech genius,
Then the investor worries you'll build a perfect product that nobody ever buys.
and if everyone's a sales guru,
The investor worries about whether the product will actually be stable, scalable, or even deliverable. Balance is key.
and lastly, they look for skin in the game, right?
Yes. Demonstrable commitment. It matters. Did the founders bootstrap the first, say, $20,000 of expenses themselves using savings? Did they actually quit their stable, high-paying corporate jobs before the first VC check cleared?
That shows real belief.
It shows they aren't just waiting for someone else's money to get serious. They're demonstrating conviction through actual personal sacrifice and commitment. And that goes a long way towards mitigating risk in the investor's mind.
Okay, so we've covered validating the market, getting that initial traction, and sorting out the financial strategy and team. But there's this other huge factor kind of lurking beneath the surface that can absolutely derail even a well-validated, well-funded startup, and that's technical debt.
Ah, yes. The silent killer.
Because if you manage to survive the idea trap and you actually get the money, the next thing that can bite you really hard is the code itself.
It's so true. And technical debt is very rarely understood by non-technical founders or even many investors as what it truly is, a business problem.
Not just an engineering problem.
Exactly. It's an unavoidable metaphor, really. Just like with financial debt, you take technical shortcuts now, maybe to hit a deadline or save immediate cost, but those shortcuts incur escalating interest payments later on.
What do those interest payments look like in software terms?
They make the code exponentially more expensive and slower to maintain and enhance than it ideally should be. Every new feature takes longer, every bug fix is more complicated.
And the actual financial cost of that can be huge, right?
It's staggering. The data we have suggests that typical software organizations waste somewhere between 23% and 42% of their total development time just dealing with the consequences of technical debt.
Wow, 23 to 42%. Where does that time go?
It manifests as longer lead times for planned new features, constantly slipping deadlines, and enormous pressure on support teams because of unexpected bugs, system outages, or just rework that shouldn't have been necessary.
Can you put that in like dollar terms?
Yeah, think about it this way. An average organization that's paying salaries for, say, 100 developers is often, because of all that drag from technical debt, only getting the effective output equivalent to about 75 developers.
So that other 25% of salary cost is just evaporating.
It's effectively wasted capacity.
Yeah.
It's salaries being paid for time spent firefighting past problems instead of building future value and innovating.
Okay, so if you realize you have this problem, this wasted capacity, the immediate intuitive reaction might be, okay, we're only getting 75 devs worth of output. Let's just hire 25 more developers.
And that, counterintuitively, is often the absolute worst thing you can do. It's perfectly explained by something called Brooks's Law.
Brooks's Law, remind me.
Brooks's Law basically states that adding manpower to a late software project makes it later.
Makes it later. How?
Because while the number of available work hours increases linearly with each new person you add, the coordination and communication overhead needed to manage them grows exponentially. The formula is roughly n times n minus 1 divided by 2, where n is the number of developers.
Ah, so the lines of communication just explode.
Exactly. You rapidly increase the number of people who need to talk to each other, who need to understand the existing, messy, likely, poorly documented code base that's riddled with debt. Every new person needs onboarding, needs context, needs to coordinate.
So eventually, adding more people actually slows things down.
At some point, especially in a troubled code base, each additional person becomes a net negative. They consume more time in meetings, onboarding, and just general communication friction than they actually contribute in productive output. You're almost always better off focusing on fixing the underlying structural issues in the code to unlock the trapped capacity of the 75 developers you already have.
Okay, so how do we actually measure this technical debt?
Yeah.
Because there's this dangerous idea floating around that technical debt is just the same as, bad code. But you can't just run some code analysis tool and get a simple debt score, can you?
You absolutely cannot. That's a huge fallacy. Code scanning tools, they measure things like complexity duplication, maybe adherence to style guides. But those metrics don't directly correlate to business impact.
How so?
Well, you could spend months refactoring a highly complex piece of code that almost never changes and has no current bugs. Was that a good use of time? Probably not. It didn't solve a business problem. Technical debt must be measured by its tangible outcome on the business's velocity and predictability.
Okay, so if not code scanners, how do we quantify the real business cost?
The most effective measure is outcome-oriented. You need to track unplanned work.
Unplanned work, define that.
Unplanned work is basically any engineering task that wasn't part of the planned roadmap. It includes emergency bug fixes, dealing with service interruptions, unexpected rework caused by earlier shortcuts, urgent security patching. Essentially, anything that steals engineering capacity away from planned feature development and makes your delivery schedules unpredictable.
Is there a benchmark for that? Like, how much unplanned work is too much?
Generally, high-performing software organizations manage to keep unplanned work consistently below about 15% of their total engineering effort. If your team is regularly spending more than 15% of its time on unplanned firefighting, that's a strong warning sign that significant potential, and therefore money, is being wasted due to underlying technical debt.
Okay, so that 15% gives us a concrete baseline to work from.
It does. You can actually estimate the financial cost of the excess technical debt by looking at the percentage points above that 15% baseline. The rough formula is untapped capacity in dollars equals the number of developers times their average salary multiplied by your unplanned work percentage minus that 0.15 benchmark.
Can you run through an example?
Sure. Let's say you have a team of 50 developers and their average loaded salary cost is $100,000 per year, and you measure your unplanned work, and it's consistently hovering around 40%.
Okay, 40% is way above 15%.
Right. You're wasting 25% of your total capacity. That's 40% minus 15%. So 25% of 50 developers is 12.5 developers worth of effort. Multiply that by the average salary.
That's $1.25 million annually.
Exactly. $1.25 million per year is being purely wasted due to the drag created by unmanaged technical debt.
That is the kind of language that gets the attention of the CEO, the CFO, and definitely the investors. It stops being some abstract complaint from engineering and becomes a direct, quantifiable hit to the bottom line and a massive break on innovation speed.
Absolutely. So to avoid getting into that state, startups need to be proactive right from the beginning. They have to consciously avoid taking too many dangerous technical shortcuts, even when the pressure is high. This means thinking about building for scale, not just for today's MVP features.
What does that look like architecturally early on?
It means proactively choosing architectures that are inherently more scalable and maintainable. Things like using serverless functions or designing with microservices from the start, even if it feels a bit like overkill initially. This allows different parts of the system to scale independently and lets teams work without constantly stepping on each other's toes.
And avoiding the monolith.
Definitely avoid the giant monolithic code base where everything is tangled together. In a monolith, a bug in one minor feature can potentially bring down the entire system, and deployments become incredibly risky and slow. It quickly turns into a major bottleneck.
And what about things that seem like nice-to-haves early on, like DevOps automation? Are they actually critical from day one?
They are absolutely non-negotiable investments, in my view. Skipping things like setting up CI/CD, continuous integration, and continuous delivery pipelines might feel like it saves you a week up front.
Yeah, seems like overhead when you're racing to launch.
But it costs you dearly down the line. It leads to painful manual deployment processes, frequent errors, integration problems, and massive bottlenecks later on. Good automation ensures that every code change is automatically tested and can be reliably deployed maybe multiple times a day.
And data strategy, is that something to worry about early too?
You really should centralize your data strategy from the very beginning. Even if it's just setting up a basic data lake or warehouse structure, this avoids creating scattered, siloed pockets of data all over the place, which makes it incredibly difficult or even impossible to do proper analytics, train machine learning models, or get real-time business insights later on when you desperately need them.
Because ultimately, this technical debt thing, It doesn't just cause bugs and slow down fixes for unplanned work. It directly impacts your ability to deliver the planned features too, right?
Absolutely. It extends the lead times for everything. It slows down your overall time to market for new innovations and severely constrains your ability to actually execute on the great market validation you worked so hard to achieve in the first place. It becomes a massive drag on the entire business. So wow, we've really covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
Yeah.
All the way from that initial spark of an idea to the nitty-gritty architectural decisions that underpin sustainable, maybe even multi-million-dollar growth.
Yeah, and I think the core takeaway here is that the journey from just having a clever idea to building a truly successful, scalable business really demands integrating three absolutely critical pillars. And interestingly, all three of them push back hard against that initial instinct we saw in my opening story that build it perfectly first, then figure out the rest mindset.
Exactly. So pillar number one, market validation. That means rigorously proving there's urgent customer pain and real demand before you commit to writing thousands of lines of code. It means using frameworks like jobs to be done and prioritizing actual execution and rapid iteration over just polishing the novelty of a secret idea.
Right. Then pillar number two, the financial strategy. That's about securing enough capital to build in resilience, aiming for those longer 24 to 30-month runaways we talked about. And crucially, it means investing that capital wisely in professional, committed talent, avoiding that trap of undercapitalized, informal development that carries so much hidden risk.
And pillar number three, architectural foresight. That means consciously building a scalable technical foundation right from day one, proactively automating things like DevOps, centralizing your data strategy early, all to avoid accumulating that crippling technical debt, which we saw acts as this massive, costly operational anchor, dragging down your progress just as you're trying to scale up.
So success, in the end, it really hinges on continuous motion, on generating demonstrable proof of demand, proof of progress, and on having that long-term strategic plan in place. It's not about waiting passively for some perfectly realized idea to magically find its market.
You nailed it. You really have to start selling or at least validating intent to buy long before you finish building. And you absolutely have to start thinking about tomorrow's scale architecturally and financially today.